Good evening, everyone, and I'd like to welcome you all to the first meeting of the Chinese Historical Society of Southern California for 2025. I hope you all had a great holiday season, and we're happy that you can join us in welcoming in not only one new year, but also a second new year. So we have a great program today, but for your information, the program tonight is being recorded and will be saved. Our host person, Lorraine Hobb. Lorraine, you will record. You start the recording? Okay, looks like you did. Okay. Anyway, thank you all for joining us. Uh, we will have a nice program to start the year. I'd like to welcome everyone. I hope everyone is safe and warm and healthy, despite some of the problems we're having down here with fires and weather and wind. But in the meantime, we're hoping that we'll find some happy and joyful things to learn about our Chinese New Year from David Lay. David Lay has been a businessman and a cultural consultant for many years. I'm not going to go through the lengthy resume, and guessing you will be glad too, David. But what we're trying to do is to really share a lot of our history, which includes a lot of culture. And learning about our roots, our cultural traditions is really important because most of the early Chinese brought their cultural practices with them to America, to Mexico, to South America, and elsewhere in the world, wherever Chinese traveled. So what we're going to learn is a little bit about the beginnings of some of these traditions and also some of the practices as they are shared by many around the world. So, David, I hope you don't mind my short intro, but what I'd like to do is to just turn the mic over to you and let you share your great font of knowledge with our great audience here. We have a lot of friends, a lot of people out there, and maybe a little bit later, by the way, we will have Q&A following this presentation, and we hope that you'll have many ideas and thoughts and questions also. So it's never too late to learn. Anyway,
Oops.
David, may I turn the mic over to you?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Eugene. I would also like to thank Susan Dixon for inviting me, not only to acknowledge her, but you can blame her if my presentation's not good and it's a total waste of your time. So, Susan, thank you for inviting me. This talk, it's very difficult to talk about the Lunar New Year because it's too much to cover, and the audience come from different background. If you're Cantonese is one thing. If you're immigrant, you grew up with it. If you're Christian or you're not Christian. So it's really quite difficult to cover all the bases. I just want to make sure everyone is looking at my title page with my email address. Yeah, you can always contact me if you have questions or want to talk more on the side. So with just that, I'll get started. Of course, the coming year is the year of the wood snake. We have 12 zodiac animal, everybody knows that, but we have 5 elements that goes along with the animal. So 5 times 12 is 60. So for the Chinese, this is how China has traditionally kept time, a 60-year cycle. And it's very confusing because you repeat the same cycle every 60 years. So unless you know the emperor or some event that went along with this cycle of 60, like eclipse, certain disaster, or something very happy that happened, you would not know which 60-year cycle this was in. So for the instance, year of the snake, it shows here 1977, 89, 201, 213. So it's every 12 years. And to make it different, we have the different elements. This year happened to be the wood year. And there's plenty online about what this means. The different animal, you can believe it or you don't have to believe it. Some try to be very rational about this, others just for fun. But we've had this for a long time. But the real reason for the zodiac animal is so we can have this calendar of 60-year cycle. It comprised of 12 stems and 10 branches that we call, and they rotate amongst each other. Instead of trying to remember all 12 stems, we assign an animal to each one. It's easier to remember. So the real purpose of assigning an animal to each year was to make it easier to remember the years. And it's not going down for me. I have to admit someone first. Maybe this will go down. And it's stuck. Let me stop share and share again and see if it'll come back on. Nope, it's stuck. Here we go. Back up. So there, if you want to read more about festivals and New Year, Chinese festivals and New Year, I recommend these two because these two are the only two I know that talks about it in the American context. Most of the others are about how it's celebrated in China, Singapore, Taiwan, Hong Kong. But yes.
Could you hold on for a second here? I need to check. I don't see the image on my screen.
Okay.
Do others see it? And perhaps Laureen, can you see the image on your screen? Okay.
Is it up now?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Sorry. So these are the two books I recommend because it covers Chinese American festival. Not completely, but it covers somewhat. And that's the reason why I recommend these two. So we always have to start with a calendar, and the complexity of the Chinese calendar is complex because it's not just a lunar calendar and it's not a solar calendar. It's the only culture that really combines both. And that's what makes it very difficult. In ancient culture, it's very easy to talk about the moon. You base your calendar on the moon because every night you can look up and it changes every night from new moon to quarter moon to full moon, and then goes the other way. So you can just tell a friend who lives far away, write them a letter, say, I'll meet you the next full moon at Xi'an in front of the palace. And you can, both sides will know exactly when and what. This is before clocks and real calendars. So most of the ancient culture based it on the moon, but for the Chinese very early on, it mixed the two because just basing on the moon, you get really messed up when it comes to farming. Most people were farmers and they need to know when to start growing their crop and when to harvest the crop. which is more based on solar. So throughout the dynasties, we've had changes. So calendar is really a political designation. And we start far left, that is Yu the Great. He controlled the flood, and that wooden statue of him is on top of the roof of Marysville Buckeye Temple, because the temple was built to control water. And he became the first real emperor we have. He's credited for founding the Xia dynasty because he was able to control the flood. And controlling the river requires the whole country to get involved. Because if you just control your little part of the river, that doesn't help people downstream or upstream. So he became emperor because he was able to control the flood. So for that reason, flood control is very much part of what the emperor has to do. So throughout Chinese history, the emperor was responsible for the flood as well as the calendar. And this is one reason why I really felt the Chinese Communist Party had to do the Three Gorge Project, knowing that they didn't have the engineering to do it. All the Western engineering firm told China, oh, you can't do it. You don't have the engineering to do this, nor does anyone else. But they did it because if you're in control of China, this is one of your responsibilities. So after Yu the Great, who founded the Xia dynasty, during his reign, New Year started in the Yin month, the first month which we celebrate today. Then the Xia dynasty, we still in the West consider that a mythological dynasty because we have no writing to confirm that it existed. Then come next the Shang dynasty to the right of it right here. They took over after the Xia, and they decided to move New Year 1 month earlier to December, January. And then the next dynasty that overthrew the Shang, the Zhou dynasty, they want to one-up the Shang dynasty, so they moved it to November, December to be the first month. And then when Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor, came about, he moved it up 1 more month to October, November. So this is to show your one up above before one up of the dynasty before you that you've taken over. So the New Year for the Chinese have moved around until the Han dynasty, Han Wudi, about 100 BCE, decided to go back to the Xia dynasty. The Yin month will be the first month. In fact, even naming the first month, Qin Shi Huang, his real name was Zhen. So we had the Zhen month, which was the first month. We couldn't even use that name because it was forbidden to use the emperor's name in your speech and your writing. In fact, the Chinese, we never name our children after the parents. We don't have juniors and so on, because it's respect for your ancestor that you don't say their name or use their name in your own name. So this is the complexity of the Chinese calendar, and it changes. Overall, we've had 102 Chinese calendars that the Chinese have used until today. And so it makes it very difficult to go back to identify dates in history, depending on what dynasty was, what calendar was used. So it's quite confusing and complex. And more confusing and complex is the lunar part of the calendar. Basically, Lunar New Year is the second new moon after the winter solstice. So it's basically based on the solar calendar as well. The winter solstice is based on the solar calendar. And after that, you go to click on your moon phases and find out the first new year or new moon after the winter solstice. And each lunar month is about 29.5 days as opposed to the solar month. So it never quite matches, but it takes about 19 years for 235 lunar months to match the 19 years times 12. So it kind of come together every 19 years. So to make it work, 7 out of 19 years, we have to add an extra month, a leap month. And that even confuses it more. And for 2025, last New Year, in Beijing, it was January 25. But for San Francisco or for the West Coast, when I was giving a talk at the Mormon church, I said, we need to celebrate Lunar New Year on January 24th because we're 16 hours behind Beijing. So anytime if the celebrations before 4 p.m. in Beijing, we have to celebrate it a day in advance. And so because the moon phase changed at the exact same time throughout the Earth, and if Chinese New Year's is based on the second new moon after the winter solstice, then it has to be exact. That's if we want to be exact about when we celebrate these. Now I go to the solar side. On the solar side, the Chinese divided the rotation of the Earth around the sun, divided into 24 positions. And for the West, we have our Zodiac symbols, and that's movement of 30 degrees around the sun. But for the Chinese, it's movement of 15 degrees because it's 24 instead of 12 segments. Because 360 degrees would be full circle around the sun. And we define New Year is Li Cun, spring commences at 315 degrees on this movement around the sun, the elliptical position. And we define that as New Year's. So the Chinese actually have several different New Years, and this is the solar New Year, and really the real New Year that the Chinese celebrate. And the Chinese have different dates as solar. Definitely the winter solstice, we celebrate that as Guodong, and is a family reunion, and we eat the tongyun, these round dumplings that you can't chew and it's hard to swallow whole. And then Qingming is also based on the solar calendar. It's always April 4th or 5th, depending on if it's a leap year or not. So because this is the real New Year, the Zodiac animal does not change until this date, until normally February 4th. But it can be February 3rd, February 5th, depends on the exact time. This year happens to be February 3rd. And let me see, February 3rd at 6:10 a.m. That's when the animal changed from a dragon to a snake. So a lot of people have the misconception that we change at the Lunar New Year based on the calendar, but it's really based on this date and is normally February 3rd, 4th, or 5th. And we have a lot of misconception that, oh boy, it's my year. I'm going to celebrate it. I'm year of the serpent, or I'm the year of the dragon. This is going to be my lucky year. Actually, it's the opposite. The Chinese feel it's very difficult to survive your year, your zodiac animal year. And you have to do, and there's many reasons behind it. It gets pretty deep. I won't go into it. And if you want to, you can email me separately. But it's a very difficult year, and you have to wear certain colors, and you definitely have to wear red. And socks is a good way to wear something red. And my wife, she's a dragon, so all last year she wore red socks. And besides that, and if you look at the bottom of this, it says "cai xiu yan," to step on petty people, step on people that are annoying people. So every step you take, you get to step on them. And normally on the 3rd day of the 3rd month, we have a ceremony to get rid of petty people in your life. That's called Da Xiu Yan. And that's done in Hong Kong all the time. I'm trying to bring that tradition back. But there's a lot of things you can do to counter. And that's the good thing about all these Chinese things to do with feng shui or a lot of these beliefs. You can always overcome them if you don't like the what's going to happen to you, the predictions. So the Chinese actually have many different New Years, small New Years, large New Years, and it all happens on the La month. The La month is the 12th month, and in Cantonese is Lap, like Lap Yok. A Lap Yok is not wax meat, although it looks like wax meat, but it means the meat of the 12th month. Lap Yok means the 12th month, Lap. So we have the 8th day of the 12th month, and traditionally the Chinese make this grain soup and give it away to the poor so everybody can nourish their body, build up their body for the cold winter that's to come. And the Buddhists have really taken over this holiday to feed the poor and to clothe the poor. So this is one thing you would want to do. And then next come the winter solstice. You eat the tongyuan you see on the left. And the Cantonese, we eat the salty kind that you see on the right here where it says winter solstice with lap cheong and a lot of the daikon or lo ba. So it's a very nourishing food, and it'll build up your fat and build up your carb to survive the cold winter. Then we go to the 23rd day of the La month is where you sent the kitchen god away. And when the kitchen god is basically a spy on the family, and you can't really party until the kitchen god is sent off and he's not at home to watch you. And he gets welcomed back the Lunar New Year. And for those 7-8 days, you get to really relax and be yourself. But for the Cantonese, we actually celebrate this or send him off on the 24th day of the La month. And this would be the Little New Year. And of course, you do all your house cleaning and all that before. And then, of course, the real beginning of the new year is the Li Cun, the coming of spring, which is February 3rd, 4th, or 5th. And this makes sense because when I was young, and we said, you're the animal starting at Lunar New Year's. Well, some years have 13 months, so we have an abundance of one animal. and less of another zodiac animal, and we're supposed to pair them for marriage, we're going to have too many of one animal and too little of another animal. So, but then if it's done every year, February 3rd, 4th, or 5th, then you always have equal number of zodiac animals to pair people up for marriage. So for Lunar New Year, one of the major thing is to family reunion. So this is the largest mass migration every year. And this is in Guangzhou 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And this is outside the train station. These people are not even in the train station. They're just trying to get in. And it's just terrible in China to try to get around during this time, but is needed. You're supposed to have your family reunion to make sure everybody's safe, to count heads, and to celebrate the New Year's together. And I'll talk more about that later. And of course, there's a lot of do's and don'ts traditions, and most of you can get online to find this. I don't have to say too much about it, about washing hair, knives, sweeping, and cleaning. And we have the flower fair in China, mainly in southern China, where there are flowers in winter, and selling fruits to prepare for the new year. And then on the right side is the flower fair in San Francisco. The big to-do is always the weekend before Lunar New Year, where we set up stalls where people can buy what they need for Lunar New Year, their hongbao, their laisi or hongbao, their flowers, and their whole chicken, because Safeway sells chicken with the head and feet cut off. For wholeness, completeness, to celebrate a Lunar New Year, you need the whole chicken. So everybody goes to Chinatown to buy their whole chicken for this celebration. So this is done throughout the world, to have these fairs to sell things. And of course, all these laisi gets put up. This is very San Francisco, one of the alleys. On the bottom left, we have Dennis. His family put this up every year because they have the store next to this alley. And he always get someone to come and help do a new one. He does a new one every year for each different zodiac animal. And he picks an auspicious word to put up. And a lot of tourists actually come here and take picture with his zodiac wall, and it's up all year. And then, of course, New Year's Eve, you have your party. In the past, it was always done at home. Now it's done mainly at restaurants in China because everyone's too busy working. And at restaurants, very hard to book a time. They normally give you 45 minutes to eat. There's a minimum amount that you have to pay for that meal, and they actually kick you out because they have another group coming in 45 minutes later. And of course, there's a lot of drinking, and you always observe the ganbei, the toasting. You always want to know who you're toasting. If you're equal to him, you want to make sure your glasses are level. If the other person's rank higher than you, you want to be lower than the other person's glass. And if you're higher up, you leave it up to the other person. If the other person know what they're doing, they will lower their glass. So it shows status. And the other thing that is done in China and throughout much of the Chinese community, immigrant community throughout the world, is to watch the CCTV's program on Lunar New Year. So the family gather to watch the CCTV's annual New Year's Eve gala. And that's just a big thing everybody's been watching the last few years. Of course, within the home, you have your tunin. And there's different foods you eat. Of course, you don't eat finish off the whole fish because you want to have leftover, because the fish, the word yu, means to have leftover surplus for the coming year. So this is what you do at home. You get together and count heads. And New Year's Eve, there's certain things you must do and certain things you can't do. And this is terrible for little kids. You tell them, you want to stay awake as long as you can. Try to stay awake the whole night, because your parents, their longevity depends on you staying awake. There's a lot of pressure on the kids, but the adults, they normally like to stay awake, and they can stay awake by gambling all night. And then, of course, even at that time, you want to stop your swearing, because that sets the tone for the coming new year. You want to be well behaved. And of course, the firecrackers. Firecrackers actually is not used to ward off evil spirits, although we say that all the time. But it's to let the deities and let our ancestors know that we're having a celebration, or we're providing food, or having a ceremony for them, we're lighting incense for them, we're having entertainment for them. There's a call to them to come down and spend time with us, and the smoke set up the environment that they like, because every time you see a painting of the deities, they're always in a misty space in the clouds. So you make that environment that is suitable, environment they like. And of course, you always use the red color firecracker instead of the cheaper newsprint kind, to have the Mundehong, or the red carpet. But really the red is not really the lucky color, but the color of blood sacrifice, because you always do that in traditional China, in ancient China, to have blood sacrifices whenever you have these ceremonies, so as to remind people of the sacrifices to ancestors. And today we remember and venerate our ancestors. We really don't worship them. The word bai can mean worship, but in the case of for our ancestors, we also bai ni. We visit people. We spend time with them during New Year's. It's the same bai. So really, for the Chinese, doing rituals is to remember them, because what kind of deities are they that we have to worship if they need us to provide them with food, with money to spend, paper money, and with clothing and so on? So the Chinese, we really just venerate our ancestor, and we came up with the word of worshiping them because of the Catholic Church. They had a problem of deciding whether the Chinese are worshiping their ancestors or just doing rituals. So if you look up Google, the rights controversy, it'll tell you about this. It's a problem within the Catholic Church, but for me, it's always rituals that we do with the ancestor, and our bai, meaning to spend time and to visit them. And then with burning money to ancestors, there's different ways of doing. Even the paper we burn. I bought these this morning because I knew for ancestor, we can't give them gold. We can only give them silver color. And the person that sold me these told me in the inside, there are silver color ones, but when I came home, there's nothing inside but blank papers. So, but for ancestors, because the Chinese, unless you were aristocratic, part of the imperial family, you're not allowed to have gold. You can have silvers. So for the ancestor, you burn them silver. For the deities, they can have gold. So there's different things, different kind of incense you burn for different occasions and different people and different things. And I can talk about this for a whole day. So if you have interest, we can talk about this another time. but it's very detailed. It's not as simple as just burning anything, presenting anything. So the first day of Lunar New Year, you go to temples. And you always, if you're married and with a child, you should have red envelopes ready to give to friends, family, and definitely for kids. But the first day is to go to the temples, and most temples are crowded, very crowded. It's hard to get in. But do go to your temple, thank the deities for your good fortune the year before, or pray for change of fortune this coming year and have your fortune told. And that's why you go to the temple that day. And then the next few days, that first day, you go visit your elders and thank them and wish them fortune, health, and a good year. And if you can't, you can FaceTime or telephone them. Today is actually quite convenient to do all this. Then we have a lot of celebration. The lion dancing and the Yangge dancing is all under this thing we call Yangge. And in China today, in the villages, one village will perform for another village. They would go and do these Yangge dances, line dancing, stilt walking, to spend time to what they call binding, to spend time and wish the next village good luck this coming year. And the reason why we do this, the meaning behind them, behind the meaning behind the line dance, I think I did give a talk to your group already, but even for the dragon, that's a whole separate talk of why they're performed. And one thing I want to bring out is that what we say we do is very important, because everyone say we line dance to ward off evil spirits. And this is quite dangerous, because if you ask the line dancers, what are evil spirits? Can you describe them to me? Most cannot. And you ask them, do you believe in these evil spirits? And they don't. Most of them don't. And you ask them, how does your dance scare them away? And they can't tell you. But the next time in front of a crowd, they will still say, we Chinese line dance to ward off evil spirits, because it's easy to say. But this is microaggression. Saying things unconsciously, not with malice, thinking is harmless. But if I were a young child in the audience and adults are saying, we Chinese line dance to ward off evil spirits, and I'm Chinese, and when the adults go away and my non-Chinese friends and come and ask me, you Chinese believe in these? What is this all about? I will be hard pressed to explain. So we have to be very careful about some of these things we say, and we have to really research deep into why we why are we doing these things before we casually say why we do these things. Then the third day is the marriage of the mouse. And there's a whole lot of stories behind this, but the first 15 days of the new year, there's something every day. And then there's a whole other conversation I can have. But just know that every day there's something you're supposed to do. Then on the 7th day is everybody's birthday. This is the day we gain one more year, not on New Year's Day, but on the 7th day of New Year is everybody's birthday, is the day of human, or day of man, we used to say, but today is day of human. And we're supposed to eat raw fish, salad. And you gather your family and your friends and you mix the salad. It's very important that everybody mix the salad together, because in Cantonese we call this lo sai gai, to prosper together, to mix the world together, to look for prosperity together as a group. And I used to do this as a kid at Samwell restaurant, Samwell in San Francisco. They were one of the few restaurants that will have the raw fish salad. And this is still done in very much in Singapore, Malaysia, and Southeast Asia. Still very popular there, less popular here. It involves depositing money into the bank to ensure you're going to be prosperous all year. But depending on your zodiac animal, there's a certain hours you should make that deposit, which today is very easy to do online. In the past, you have to stand in line at the bank with your fellow zodiac animal, all trying to get into the bank to make the deposit at one time. So this is a fun holiday and tradition to do. And then today, of course, in San Francisco and many other communities, we have our pageant. This was started in 1953 in San Francisco by H.K. Wong, one of the founders of the Chinese Historical Society of America here in San Francisco. He also started the parade as well. And the whole celebration ends on the 15th day of the Lunar New Year. It's the Lantern Festival. It's the full moon. And so our parade, which normally falls on or around the Lantern Festival, is really the celebration of the Lantern Festival, because on Lantern Festival night, all the children in the community will make their lantern and go out and form a procession with their lanterns. And that's the closest thing we have to a parade. They don't have a Chinese New Year's parade in Asia until about 15 years ago, when San Francisco, our parade, no, this must be 25 years ago, when San Francisco, our parade committee went to Hong Kong and taught Hong Kong how to put together a Chinese New Year's parade. So this is the Chinese New Year parade is American chop suey thing. So our parade, if you look at our dragon, it's just one big lantern that gets paraded. And so here's the people that started the Chinese Lunar New Year parade. The main three are on top: H.K. Wong, Charles Leon, and John C. Young, Colonel John Young, and then taken over by below here, Wayne Hu's the son, and Jackson Hu. And this is Colonel John Young a few years later, founder of the Chinese Historical Society. Many of them were involved with the founding and helpings started, especially H.K. Wong. And Qinghua Li was the advisor for Chinese traditions and customs, as with Thomas Chin. So because you are also a historical society, I would like to bring this up. And this, the last about 30 years, this was a group that's doing the parade. But now I want to go back to the philosophy of why we celebrate the Lunar New Year. So this is the Chinese character for ox or cow, ngao, because you can see here's the horn, a pair of legs, a body with a long tail. So this we can see is a cow, ngao in Chinese. So this is what we have for year, the Chinese word for year. And of course, you look at it, you say, well, this looks like a horn, but it has three pairs of legs and a body like this side and a tail, but it has an extra eye. So what have you seen in the zoo of late with 6 legs, horns, 3 eyes, a big body, and tail? Well, this is a monster. And the Chinese looked upon a year as something to be feared, because it's so hard to survive a whole year. You have to feed everybody. You have floods. You have famine. You have drought. It's so hard. That's why New Year's Eve, you gather the whole family to count heads and wish everybody good luck on the coming year. And then the next few days, you go visit all your friends and see who survived the whole year and wish them good luck on the next year. So this story was told to me by Gordon Liu, who founded East West newspaper, and he used to go to all the schools to tell the story. And I repeat the story because it tells why the Chinese have their family reunion and all this. Then later on, I looked up the root word of Nian, and it's not a monster. It's actually means grain, a surplus of grain. But it's still a good story as long as you tell people, believe this, and later on you can believe it or not, but it's a good story. So it's up to you to believe it or not. Then I want to go to words that we see all the time during New Year. This is the word for phúc or blessing, oftentimes represented by a bat, which sounds the same as phúc, but it's really made up of, this means a roof. This is a mouth for food to eat. And this part is land. And this, some people say clothing to wear, but really the root word of this is to have a child or a progeny, a son especially. So if you have shelter, food to eat, land, and progeny, you are blessed. So this word phúc means blessed, and oftentimes is shown upside down, a pun meaning blessings have arrived. And this is another word. I don't know why I put it in here, but since it's on, it's the word for good, hao or ho, and it comprises of a female or daughter on the left. So this is daughter, and this is a son, a male. So if you have a daughter and son, you have goodness. So the placement for the Chinese is always nam zuo nui yao, male on the left, female on the right. This is stage left and stage right. From the stage looking out, the male is on your left-hand side, the female is on the right-hand side from the stage. So your placement is always this. Maybe later on I have other things I can say why this is important. The placement is very important for the Chinese. So when you show a boy and girl, it's always placed this way for goodness. And during New Year's, you would see the J boy, the golden boy, and the J girl and the golden boy. And sometimes they place wrong, so there's no goodness. But if they're placed this way, then you're promoting goodness. You're telling people there will be goodness this coming year. So I really celebrate New Year, and I decorate the house with this chun hub. Is sweets, and each item represents something. And I really decorate the house, and everything means something. There's hidden meanings. And like this is 柿子, they're persimmons, but in Mandarin, 柿. So 是 everything. It sounds the same as everything. 平安, these are apples, so 平安. And this is longevity or 如意. It's in the shape of a 如意, back scratcher, as you wish. So everything you do is peaceful and as you wish. So I would decorate my house this way every year. I look forward to that. I hang up couplets, and there's a whole lot about couplets. It's very literary that you would do. And can I have links to something that talks about couplets that will be put on the chat. So Lorraine, can you put that on now on chat so everybody can click on that at their own time when they want to find out more about string couplets? And then I want to talk about rebuses. Rebuses, can anyone figure out what this picture is? My daughter drew this for me, I think when she was on 5th grade. I told her I needed a rebus. Can she come out with one? And we ended up with, we have 4 B's here, a or, a not, out in some kind of background. So really, if you read into it, there's 2 B's here. So to be or not to be. So I can convey that by drawing this. So that's basically what a rebus is to have images or a pun on word, homonym, words that sounds the same but have different meaning. And for the Chinese, we have plenty of this in our language because we in Chinese can make about 300 sounds. But for a high schooler, we should know about 4,000 characters that we use all the time. But for Americans, we would know about 25,000 English words compared to the 4,000 high school word that a Chinese would know. So in English, we have a lot more words to describe a situation. The Chinese, we have a lot less. And we only can make 300 sounds, divide into those 4,000 words. A lot of words will have the same sounds. Now, we're lucky in Chinese, we have 4 tones. So that increases it to 1,200 sounds we can make for that 4,000 words we use to read the newspaper and so on. And if you're educated, you will know 8,000 words. There's about 80,000 possible Chinese words in our huge dictionaries. So divided by even 1,200, you have a lot of words that have the same sounds. So it's very easy for rebus. It's very good for poems, poetry, but it's terrible for recording scientific situation. So for someone to read it 1,000 miles away and have true understanding, because we have so few words to describe any situation. So because of that, we have a lot of rebuses, and during New Year, we see all these images. But for all these Chinese images, there's hidden image. So this is Year of the Rooster, and we have a word, this is a big chicken. So 大雞, and this is a 鯉魚, 大吉大利. Actually, yeah, 大吉大利. So big fortune and big prosperity, because it sounds the same. Here we have 年年. These are 年魚. So year after year, because it sounds the same as year. But the fish is called 年魚, so there's 2 of them, 年年. And these are big oranges or mandarin oranges, which are called gut. So it's 大吉. So it's the same as this. These are catfish, 年魚, 年年, and they wrote out the word 大吉, big oranges or big fortune, to have good luck. So that's what this is too, but it should be a huge one to say the same thing. So this is communicating without saying it. And here's more. I'm getting short of time, so I'm going to skip this. And then these are more this is 喜鹊, happiness, joy, bird, and having a son or a child, next generation. So these are all good luck symbol. Longevity, fish for abundance, continuous, protection of children, to have a boy and girl with the boy on stage left or right when you're looking at it, and the girl this way, convey goodness. And then most home put these out for Lunar New Year. Fuklok the 3 star god of blessing, status or wealth, and longevity. So this is blessing because he's giving a son, having a son. This is a position, ministerial position. So he has a lot of wealth, but it's more status, and everything goes smoothly for you as you wish. This is what we call Rui scepter, as you wish, a grant grant giving scepter, but it's really a back scratcher as you wish, getting to your itch as you like it. And this is longevity. But besides the Chinese belief, besides having a long life, it's more important to have a vigorous long life. It's no good if you're just old and bedridden. And it's even better if you have a vigorous sexual long life, which is what he represents. Few people talk about this, but this is a male sex organ, very obvious. If you look up the Japanese one for the god of longevity, his head is much taller. And then this is the female sex organ, and you can see, obviously, here's the female sex organs. So is to convey that you must be sexually vigorous, healthy, long age, and that's what it conveys. And then for the Cantonese, we have our own saying, because for our zodiac animal, we want to show the tongue. And this only worked for Cantonese because we call this lei. In Mandarin, this would be called 舌头, which makes no sense. So this was for the year of the rooster, which was what I made this PowerPoint for. The Cantonese always show the tongue. And this is not realistic, because realistically, you can't see the rooster's tongue. But for the Cantonese, we want to see it because this means profit. Lei is also the same sound as profit. So the Cantonese, when we buy a zodiac animal or anything, we want to see the tongue. And so this is more guan shang guan, to get a promotion after the next promotion. 3 friends of winter means friends during hard time, because the plum blossom, the bamboo, and the plum blossom, the bamboo, and the pine tree, they survive and they blossom in winter. So these are your very best friends. You're together during harsh times. And this is something I sent to close friends, just to tell them how I appreciate them and remind them how I appreciate them without having to say it. And then these are other symbols. I'm running out of time. 同偕到老, this is very good for wedding, to be together, because shoes are always together. 同, this is brass, which sounds the same as 同. So it's to be together until you're old, because these are old. This is an old antique. So to be together to old. So this is a great gift to anniversary gift to someone that's been married a long time or someone about to get married. So I'm going to skip the others. So most people already know the good luck things, but few people know about the bad luck. You know some of the bad luck. You never give a clock to someone, because this is songjong, to give a wreath, a death wreath, or songjong is to be present during their last breath. So we don't want to give these, and this is for funeral. An umbrella, I'm not sure if this is even Chinese or Western concept of bad luck, but for the Chinese, this is a play on word li. Li is the Mandarin word for pair, and to separate is also li. So you don't want to separate. If you want to really don't like someone and want to separate from them, you give them a gift of peers, and they should understand you don't want to talk to them anymore. You want to separate. And even shoes, books, because it's you never give a book to a gambler, because you're telling them to lose, which is su. But you can counter this by giving them a brush, because a brush is a butt, or a pen is a butt. So butt also sounds like to not. So not to lose, you give them a pen and a book, but if you really want them to lose, you give them a book. And this one, 2 horses and 2 tiger, what does that mean? In Mandarin's, mama, hu hu, mama, fu fu, means mediocre. If you think someone is mediocre, sent them a pair, a charm of two horses, two tiger, or a painting of two tigers and two horses, and you're telling them they're pretty mediocre. And here, I gave this to a friend because he likes to brag. And this is a whistle. You blow into this ox that's a whistle, and this is a painting. The ox is being blown at. The wind is very heavy. So in Cantonese, to 吹牛, or in Mandarin, 吹牛, is to brag. So if you think someone brag a lot, you sent them these. And then these are persimmons. And since there's a lot of persimmons, we say 多喜. "Si" is the Cantonese word for, or the Mandarin word for persimmon, 是, 柿子. So if there's more of this is 多事, that means you get into people's affair a lot, and that's just what this means. 多喜非. This means really you go and gossip and have gossipy. That's what it means. And this one, these are peach blossoms, and we have two swallows. And if you have someone you really don't like and you have this painting, you can put up in your house. And when they come and visit you, you can say, I put up this painting because I thought of you and you would really enjoy it. And they will thank you for thinking of them and putting this up. But the real meaning of peach is tou or tao, tao in Mandarin. And these are swallow, yin, yinji or yanzi. So in Cantonese is tou yin. So 讨厌, someone that you don't like, that is very bothersome. So the Chinese love this, to have someone thank you for swearing at them or putting them down. This is the ideal way of one-up them in a very scholarly way. So this is communicating. We can communicate without saying it. And this is the last one is 谢谢, thank you. And I have two crab. It only makes sense in Mandarin because in Cantonese, this would be hai hai, which doesn't really mean much. But in Mandarin, they're called 螃蟹. So I have two of them. We have 谢谢. So thank you. And my email again, in case you want to contact me. Thank you very much, and I'll stop share.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, David. That's a whole textbook of learning. I know that there are a number of questions that came up in the chat, and I want to share some of those, but I actually want to be selfish and ask the first question. In your title of your presentation, what your mother never told you. Can you share with us what your mother shared with you? What did you learn from your mother? And did you have to go out and learn this on your own?
I'm third generation Christian. My grandfather became a Christian. And my parents were Christian. So I was denied a lot of the traditions. Christianity kicked out a lot of the traditions. And one of the reasons was this was to be modern. Almost all our universities and schools in China during the turn of the 20th century in 1900, they were almost all Christian schools. The missionaries went to China and opened these schools, and they realized the Chinese value education, and one way to prophesize and convert the Chinese was through Christianity. So you people have like Sun Yat-sen, the educated Chiang Kai-shek. Many of these were Christians because they went to school and they were the educated, and they were told, all these traditions and customs were bad, superstitious. For China to modernize, it must get rid of all these. We must have a cultural revolution, get rid of all these traditions and adopt Western tradition. So my parents grew up with that, But my father saw through it and started getting more and more traditional, at least willing to talk to me about it. So I got a bit of it toward the latter part of my life, but a lot of this I did on my own because of the situation I was put in. I was director of the Chinese New Year parade starting in 1977, but my engagement with the parade was since 1965. I organized the people to do the dragon in 1965. So I grew up with the parade. And since I was asked all these questions about Lunar New Year, that's where I learned. But there are books written now, and on the internet, you can learn this very quick. And if you want a quicker answer, and especially a answer in the American context of what it means, what we should or should not be saying today about it, or how we should look at it from the American point of view, because our descendants will be Americans. And unless it's meaningful to them, it's not going to survive. So yeah, you email me if you want to talk about this more. That's a long answer, sorry.
That's great. So let me maybe get into some of the questions or comments too. One of the early comments was from Isaac. He indicated that one uh, reason for having preserved meats was that it was a lead up to the spring festival. Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, in the old days, this was when the wind changed. You start making these October, November. If you go back to Nam Hong and to the villages, most villages will hang the meat starting October when the cold wind comes. And it's just a way of preservation. Instead of just salting them, you can dry them. This is up until the 60s, until, I take that back, until the 80s. China did not have refrigeration. So a lot of food we eat, they're preserved. That's why they have different tastes. Chinese, we have so many preserved vegetables, fruits, and everything else is because it's a way to keep them a long time, because you can't keep fresh food for too long. Then we find out, oh, they taste different and they taste good on their own. But the lap yolk, like lap cheong and lap ap and all these lap, actually means the 12th month, meat that you eat on the 12th month, because by that time you probably don't have as much fresh meat. You slaughter your pig during harvest time in the fall when they're really fat. So it's just to preserve it. And it's the timing too in the fall is the time to really dry the meat. So, but then, I like to eat it anytime. And we can eat it anytime today.
That's great that it preserves, it
Yes.
gets preserved, and so you can have it all
Yeah.
year. I remember as a kid growing up in LA, and then I think maybe a few of you were out in the audience. There are kids who grew up in LA, like Donna. I won't name any names, but anyway, uh, I used to have to. My brother and I would have to watch the lap goat. We call it. We pronounce it goat, lap goat, hanging on a string, hanging from a bamboo pole in our backyard,
Yes.
and we had
Yes.
to make sure that no flies got under the netting.
Impossible.
We had to chase them out, But well, we did it, and
Yes.
that was a memory of growing up in LA.
Yes.
A comment about, and I thought it was just kind of funny about hitting small people.
Yes. Beating petty people.
Hitting petty people. So I think Christine had a comment mentioning growing up in Hong Kong.
Yes.
That was something that was a little
underneath the freeway bridge, because it has to be a very yin, dark, dank place that you do this. I'm trying to revive it. It's very popular. We did it about 3 years ago at the Bokkai Festival at Marysville, and we had about 100 people doing it. So normally around March the 3rd, we have this. It's really in March, I think. Jesus, it's second day of the second lunar month, I think, is the real date for this. So it's normally in March. Come to San Francisco, I'll email it out. Maybe we'll do it on Zoom.
Yeah, and by the way, for those of us who have not been to the San Francisco parade, know that that event happens in the evening,
Yes,
lights, whereas ours in LA is in the daytime.
yes. This year is February 15th. Come on up. I'll give you a tour. If
And
you
ours
have
is on
bring a whole group.
February, we're on February 8th. And by the way,
Okay.
those of you, I know that many in the audience are from various parts of the state or even the country. I think I see, Chris, I see you're online, and maybe you're zooming in from New York. Anyway, a couple of other comments. Kimberly, you say a comment that I know Chinese were passive aggressive, but didn't know that it was this deep to invite someone you don't like over and put up a special painting.
That's just me.
Oh, okay. Well, that seemed to evoke a response.
But of course, you can make up your own. With Chinese, is actually pretty easy. So we can create our own. You can create your own for your own family, different good luck one, bad luck ones, and so on. So you can use it amongst your own family for coding. But I think it's a lot of fun to have your own traditions, and it brings the unit together. And you might have it for your Chinese Historical Society of Southern California. You have your own, so you can fool other groups when you get. So these are great. This is communications.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad we're having this communication too. I think David is a friend, almost long time. We've known each other for a little while. Actually, I don't have any old friends. I have many longtime friends. But just as a couple of other, some comments, like thank you, so wonderful and informative, and thank you, fascinating. Thank you for sharing. Stacy, Kimberly, Evelyn, and I do have a question. Let me see here. Oh yeah, Connie appreciated in learning the background explanation of phrases. It's very interesting. And thanks you also for the information. A lot of discussion, meaning of giving gifts from Karen. Angela, our own board member, enjoyed the presentation. I'm scanning here for additional questions to see. I'm wondering if there's anything else.
Chris Clark has a question.
Okay, can you read this one? That one.
We have to unmute him. I don't know, or he can unmute himself.
Let me see. Why don't we, Lorraine, why don't we just unmute everyone?
Oh, yeah. No, thank you, David. Thank you once again. What are your thoughts on good to see everyone. What are your thoughts on the trend to call it Lunar New Year versus Chinese New Year? And I think that here we've used it interchangeably. I've got my thoughts, but I'd like to hear yours.
Yeah, for the Chinese New Year's parade, now we're calling it Chinese New Year's parade. For some years, we called it the Lunar New Year parade because we want to bring in more Asian group. And for some reason, about a dozen years ago, they switched it back to Chinese New Year. And this year, they talked about that again at the Chinese Chamber of Commerce. They produced a parade, and it went through the board to see which way they want to go. Many of the cultures near China used this calendar. The Japanese went away from it, but then, so you can go either way. If you want to be more inclusive of the others, mainly Vietnam, Korea, Japan, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, then you can say lunar. Uh, uh, but if you want to focus on just the Chinese, we do things differently. The Vietnamese, they don't have the year of the rabbit, they have the cat, on and on. There's slight difference between them all. So yeah, it's really up to the different groups that's producing these events.
If I may insert a comment, and by the way, I think I neglected to introduce myself at the very beginning. I am Eugene Moy, not just a voice in the air, but I am the current president of the Chinese Historical Society of Southern California. And I was born in LA, Chinatown, grew up in LA, and have watched the demographics of Southern California, especially, change over the years. One of the things that has been recognized is that while Chinese were an early migrant group that came here to the West, to California and elsewhere in this country, we are actually no longer the only Asian community in town. There are just as many Filipinos in California as there are Chinese. And there are, in LA Chinatown, better than half of the business owners have Asian surnames. So, and have Southeast Asian surnames. So I think that the parade that we have every year is now called the Golden Dragon Parade, and we celebrate the Lunar New Year because it really reflects the fact that we have a much broader Asian population than just the Chinese. So it's just a step in the direction of inclusivity. I don't see any other real questions here. And
I think Chris had a comment, a follow-up comment, Chris.
I definitely, thank you, David, for the answer, and Eugene. I actually think that there's this general, within Asian American circles, there's this idea like, oh, it's not Chinese New Year, it's Lunar New Year. But, as David said, it's a lunar solar calendar. So technically, it's incorrect to even call it like a Lunar New Year. There's other Lunar New Years in Asia, like Diwali, which I understand to be also on the lunar calendar. And then I also feel that there's within other Asian countries, there's a disdain for sort of like, oh, it's not Chinese New Year. Like, we don't want to talk about that. We don't want to talk about that Chinese origin. Like, that's kind of like my feeling when I have people sort of going towards Lunar New Year. And usually I definitely understand sort of the idea about like, oh, it's more inclusive, but it's like, in Asia, like if you're in China, if you're in Chinese societies like Singapore or countries with large Chinese populations, they celebrate Chinese New Year based on those traditions. And, in a way that's really significant, as opposed to like Japan, which when they went through the Meiji Revolution was like, we're no longer Chinese, we're the West, we're just going to get rid of it. Like they were very like, you guys are like the ancient, we're the modern, right? And it was kind of like a diss, right? And so it's really interesting that other Asian countries can celebrate and take part as they wish. But when we want to say, hey, that's our creation, we're proud of it, this is our traditions, then we're like, no, it's not Chinese, it's lunar. So that's kind of like some of my sort of complicated feelings about calling it Lunar New Year. I always want to be like, it's Chinese New Year, it's where it started, we created the calendar, okay, there's nothing wrong with it. It's kind of like, and so I'm still struggling with it, but I do thank you for the history, but that issue I'm still kind of like grappling with.
Chris,
I-
thank you. I think we have to follow with this, get together in groups of threes and fives and really dig into this and have other people do it because we really have to think through
Yeah,
how we express our culture. We
yeah,
haven't.
yeah. And I'm a third generation Christian. All of that was blasted out of us because I remember when we got to America, the third year we were in America, my parents sat us down and they said, "We can't afford Christmas and Chinese New Year. We're only going to do Christmas. There's no more Chinese New Year." And I remember thinking, really? And for decades, we never got red envelopes. No family around to give us. We cut Chinese New Year out for budgetary reasons. And now that I have a 3-year-old and 5-year-old, my question is, how do I give you guys, not that I, am angry at my parents, but how do I give you what I didn't have? How do I recapture that? But
well, my parents were Christians too.
Mm,
I could see this schizophrenia because
mm,
they ended up practicing both. So anyway,
But
uh,
our discussions, we can talk about that.
yeah,
How do you deal
yeah.
with both? And why is it important for us to pass it to the next generation in terms of
mm.
psychological health
Yes,
and
yes.
diversity and so on?
Yeah.
So that's a whole separate conversation that we
So
really should organize.
anyway, this is a great discussion, and David left his email address on the screen a little while earlier, and we can share it in case anyone else is interested. Uh, for those who want to view this again, the program is recorded and will be on the Historical Society's YouTube channel. Uh, just go to our website, chssc.org, and scroll around and you'll find our YouTube button. I do want to comment that this program, today's program, was organized by Susan Dixon, our program chair and former past president. And she has a list of programs coming up. Next month in February, our speaker will be Laura Ng, archaeologist and scholar, historian. We'll share the title of the program with you at a later point. I do have one announcement from Bob Lee, who I think might still be in the audience. Bob is the president of the China Society of Southern California. He had an organized program for his group of folks to visit the Ovation Theater in Hollywood tomorrow. But due to the fires in the Hollywood Hills, that has been canceled. So anybody in the China Society who was planning to go, just want to let you know that. So anyway, we'll close, but I won't go away without a shout out to some longtime friends. Remember, I said I don't have any old friends; I have longtime friends. I see Sylvia Sunminick out there, and I just want to say hello. We haven't seen each other in a long, long time. I see Paul Perez. I see Jan Lee. I see Michael from Santa Barbara, or Goleta, actually, I should say. Uh, and uh, Don Lu is my best man. But also like to shout out to Kin Hui from the Chinese American Citizens Alliance National Board, Executive Vice President. And it's good to see you join in. Anyway, in the meantime, please send your questions to either us, any other questions to directly to David. Anyway, it's great to see you, David, and
Yes.
we hope to get together again real soon.
And everybody should light an incense or think about the people affected by the fire in LA. It's really devastating for Eugene and Susan and the people affected.
And, yeah, well, we're hoping and praying for the best for everyone. Thank you, and everyone have a great evening and Happy New Year. Thank you.